Hey everyone, glad you're here, Call. Today we're taking a trip across America to places that somehow became tourist attractions.
Humanity built skyscrapers, rockets, and the internet, then parked a giant ketchup bottle beside a highway. Before we begin this beautiful road trip through America's strangest roadside fever dreams, subscribe to the channel and join our Telegram community. Link waiting for you in the description below. That's where we drop bonus stories, weird photos, and even more absurd American chaos the internet somehow allows to exist. Now buckle up, because the next few minutes will feel less like a road trip and more like a national cry for help. 1. The world's largest ball of twine. Kansas only in America could someone wake up one morning and think, you know what this country really needs? A giant ball of string. And instead of being stopped by friends, family, or basic human reason, they were encouraged. In Cawker City, Kansas, the world's largest ball of twine sits like a monument to boredom, mixed with unstoppable Midwestern determination. It started in 1953 when a man named Frank Stober began wrapping sisal twine into a ball simply because, honestly, nobody knows anymore. But the truly insane part is that the town decided this wasn't enough. Every year, locals gather for Twine-a-thon events, where people ceremonially add more string to the gigantic, tangled meatball of despair. Imagine explaining this to Europeans. Yes, Pierre, we drove 6 hours to stare at rope. The ball now weighs several tons, proving that Americans will absolutely turn anything into a tourist attraction if there's enough parking nearby and at least one gift shop selling magnets. 2. Carhenge, Nebraska. Some people visit England to see Stonehenge, one of humanity's greatest ancient mysteries. Americans looked at that and said, cool. But what if we replaced the stones with rusty old cars? Welcome to Car Engine Alliance, Nebraska, a full-scale replica of Stonehenge built entirely from vintage automobiles spray-painted gray because apparently subtlety died somewhere around Route 66. It was created in 1987 by Jim Reinders as a memorial to his father after studying Stonehenge in England. And honestly, that's either incredibly heartfelt or the result of a man spending way too much time alone in a garage. The structure uses 39 classic American cars stacked nose first into the dirt like the world's strangest traffic accident. Standing there feels like discovering evidence that aliens visited Earth and immediately became obsessed with junkyards. Tourists wander around taking deep philosophical photos beside upside-down Cadillacs while trying very hard not to ask the obvious question, why? And that's the magic of roadside America. Nobody knows why. The confusion is the attraction. 3. The giant Paul Bunyan and Babe. Minnesota, America has always loved giant statues because apparently regular-sized objects don't make us feel patriotic enough. In Bemidji, Minnesota, travelers are greeted by a towering 18-foot Paul Bunyan standing beside Babe the Blue Ox, a creature so enormous it looks like it could accidentally destroy a Walmart just by sneezing. Built in 1937, the statues were originally designed to attract tourists during the Great Depression, proving Americans invented clickbait long before the internet. And it worked beautifully. Families still pull over every single day to take awkward vacation photos beside what looks like a lumberjack superhero guarding the nation's pancakes. Paul's giant grin has the unsettling energy of a man who definitely knows where bodies are buried in the forest. Meanwhile, Babe stares blankly into the distance, like he's questioning every decision that led him here. The best part? Entire generations of kids genuinely believed Paul Bunyan was a real historical figure, instead of a giant fairy tale man who could probably bench press a pickup truck. Honestly, if you drive across enough American highways, you eventually stop questioning giant blue oxen entirely. 4. Cadillac Ranch. Texas nothing says welcome to America quite like 10 Cadillacs buried nose first in the Texas dirt like they lost a fight with gravity. Cadillac Ranch, sitting just outside Amarillo, looks less like art and more like the aftermath of a billionaire's midlife crisis. Built in 1974 by an art group called Ant Farm, which already sounds suspicious, the installation features classic Cadillacs half buried at the same angle as the Great Pyramid of Giza, because apparently somebody looked at ancient Egypt and thought, needs more automobiles. But here's where it becomes peak America. Visitors are encouraged to spray paint the cars. Every single inch is covered in layers of graffiti, declarations of love, bad drawings, and at least 40 marriage proposals written by people named Tyler. The cars constantly change colors like giant steel mood rings abandoned beside the highway. Tourists arrive with spray cans like pilgrims visiting a sacred temple of bad decisions. And somehow, against all logic, this chaotic pile of vandalized luxury sedans became one of the most photographed landmarks in Texas. Honestly, if aliens landed here first, they'd assume our entire civilization worshipped rust. 5. The Big Banana. California, America has many important monuments. The Statue of Liberty, Mount Rushmore, and in California, a giant banana standing beside the road like it escaped from a cartoon. The Big Banana in Bakersfield proves that roadside attractions were basically the original social media thumbnails. Its only job is forcing exhausted drivers to slam the brakes and yell, "Wait, was that a massive fruit?" And yes. Yes, it was. The structure towers over visitors with the confidence of a potassium-powered dictator. Nobody even remembers who first decided giant fruit would attract customers. But once America discovered oversized produce worked, there was absolutely no turning back. Suddenly, highways became agricultural fever dreams. Giant oranges, giant peaches, giant pistachios. Somewhere along the way, normal marketing quietly died. Families stop beside the banana for photos that will confuse future generations forever. Kids stare at it like they've discovered a sacred relic. Meanwhile, adults pretend this is a completely reasonable use of construction money. The best part is that no one drives past thinking, "That's ridiculous." Instead, they think, "Honey, slow down. I want a picture with the banana." And that sentence alone explains at least 40% of American culture. 6. Lucy the Elephant, New Jersey. Back in the 1800s, someone in New Jersey had a revolutionary business idea. What if we built a 6-story elephant near the beach? And instead of being laughed out of town, they actually built it. Lucy the Elephant has stood in Margate, New Jersey since 1881, looking like the world's largest escaped circus animal, frozen in place by ancient magic. Originally created to attract real estate buyers, Lucy is made almost entirely of wood and tin, meaning America basically constructed a gigantic fire hazard and called it tourism. Over the decades, Lucy has been a tavern, a summer home, and at one point nearly got demolished before locals saved her because apparently the giant elephant had become emotionally important. Tourists can now climb inside the structure and stare out through windows hidden in Lucy's eyes, which sounds charming until you realize you're literally standing inside an elephant's skull cavity during summer heat. At night, the whole thing becomes slightly terrifying. Imagine driving through coastal New Jersey at midnight and suddenly seeing a glowing elephant larger than your apartment looming over the road. That's not a landmark. That's the opening scene of a Stephen King novel. 7. The International Car Forest. Of the last church, Nevada is already a strange place. It's mostly desert, casinos, and people making decisions they'll regret before breakfast. But near the tiny town of Goldfield sits something even stranger. Dozens of cars buried vertically in the desert like giant metal gravestones for civilization itself. Welcome to the International Car Forest of the Last Church, which sounds less like a tourist attraction and more like a post-apocalyptic cult documentary. Artists took old vehicles, planted them nose down into the ground, covered them in graffiti, and essentially created what looks like the world's weirdest robot cemetery. Some cars balance impossibly high in the air while others stick halfway out of the dirt like they're trying to escape Nevada itself. Nobody can fully explain the meaning of the installation, which honestly makes it feel even more American. We love building things first and inventing deeper meaning later. Visitors wander through the desert taking artsy photos beside upside-down sedans while trying not to question reality too hard. It feels like Mad Max directed a roadside attraction after surviving 3 straight days at Burning Man. And somehow, it's weirdly beautiful. 8. Foamhenge, Virginia. Most countries honor ancient history with dignity and respect. America looked at Stonehenge and thought, what if we recreated this using styrofoam beside a highway? That brings us to Foamhenge in Virginia, one of the greatest monuments ever built by someone who clearly had too much free time and unlimited confidence. Created by artist Mark Klein in 2004, Foamhenge is a full-size replica of England's Stonehenge made entirely from painted foam blocks. And from a distance, it actually looks convincing, right until you realize ancient druids probably weren't working with materials from a craft store. The fake stones weigh almost nothing, which somehow makes the entire attraction even funnier. Tourists walk around pretending to absorb mystical energy while standing beside giant pieces of glorified packing material. It's like America wanted its own ancient mystery, but also wanted it lightweight and affordable. The site became so popular that people genuinely debated whether Foamhenge was more fun than the real Stonehenge, because at least here you can get snacks nearby and park without sacrificing your sanity. Honestly, that might be the most American sentence ever spoken. 9. Salvation Mountain, California. Deep in the California desert, where the heat feels personal and gas stations become spiritual experiences, there's a giant neon-colored mountain covered entirely in paint, Bible verses, and what can only be described as one man's extremely committed art project. Salvation Mountain was created by Leonard Knight, who spent decades building this massive structure out of adobe clay, straw, and over 100,000 gallons of donated paint. That's right. While most people struggle to finish assembling IKEA furniture, this man casually built a Technicolor hill in the desert because he felt inspired. The entire mountain explodes with bright reds, yellows, blues, and giant messages about love. Standing there feels like entering a Dr. Seuss version of a religious vision quest. Tourists wander around in stunned silence, partly because it's beautiful and partly because nobody understands how this structure hasn't melted into soup under the desert sun. The place became so famous that it's appeared in movies, documentaries, and countless road trip photos. Honestly, America has mastered the art of turning a guy doing something weird alone in the desert into a legitimate cultural landmark. 10. The Blue Whale of Catoosa, Oklahoma. Nothing captures old-school Route 66 energy quite like pulling over beside a giant smiling whale in the middle of Oklahoma. The Blue Whale of Catoosa looks like something invented by exhausted parents trying to distract children during a 14-hour road trip in 1978. Built in the early 1970s by a man named Hugh Davis as an anniversary gift for his wife, which is already setting unrealistic relationship standards, the whale quickly became a roadside icon. And yes, apparently some husbands buy flowers, while others construct massive aquatic creatures beside ponds. Families used to swim around the whale, picnic nearby, and climb inside it because America once treated basic safety regulations like optional suggestions. The whale's enormous grin somehow manages to feel both welcoming and slightly threatening at the same time, like it knows secrets about Route 66 nobody should hear after midnight. Today, tourists still stop for photos, proving humans are biologically incapable of ignoring giant smiling animals beside highways. The best part is that nobody can fully explain why the whale became famous. It simply achieved celebrity status through pure determination and excellent vibes. 11. The Corn Palace, South Dakota. Most towns decorate buildings with brick, marble, or tasteful landscaping. Mitchell, South Dakota looked at all of that and said, "What if we covered an entire palace with corn?" And somehow, against all logic, it worked. The Corn Palace is exactly what it sounds like. A giant building decorated with thousands of bushels of corn, grain, and native grasses arranged into massive murals. Every single year, artists completely redesign the exterior using different colors and types of corn because apparently this town treats vegetables like Renaissance art supplies. Originally built in 1892 to prove South Dakota had good soil, the palace accidentally became one of America's strangest traditions. Tourists drive hundreds of miles just to stare at agriculture attached to walls. Imagine explaining that sentence to someone from another country. Inside the palace, there are sports events, concerts, and festivals happening beneath giant corn chandeliers because America never does anything halfway. The building smells faintly like a farm mixed with county fair nostalgia. Honestly, the Corn Palace feels like something invented during a fever dream after eating too many corn dogs at a state fair. And somehow, that makes it perfect. 12. The Giant Pistachio, New Mexico. In New Mexico, someone looked at pistachios and thought, "These nuts deserve a monument, not a small sign, not a cute little mascot. A 30-foot pistachio towering beside the highway like the final boss of trail mix." The giant pistachio was built by a local pistachio farm owner named Tim McGinn as a tribute to his late father, proving that American grief sometimes manifests itself in deeply confusing architecture. Officially called the world's largest pistachio, the sculpture stands proudly in the desert, where it looks simultaneously majestic and ridiculous. Tourists stop to take selfies beside a giant nut while pretending this is a completely normal vacation activity. The farm also sells flavored pistachios in every variety imaginable, because once you've built a monument to snacks, subtlety is no longer part of the business plan. The entire attraction perfectly captures Roadside America's greatest strength: absolute commitment to nonsense. Somewhere out there, ancient civilizations built pyramids aligned with the stars. Meanwhile, modern America built a colossal pistachio beside Interstate 10 and honestly expected people to admire it. The weirdest part? We absolutely do. 13. Hole N, The Rock, Utah. Some people buy houses, others build cabins. And then there was Albert Christensen, who looked at a massive sandstone cliff in Utah and decided to carve an entire home directly into it, like a man preparing for the world's strangest apocalypse. Hole N. The Rock is a 5,000 square foot house carved into solid rock, complete with bedrooms, fireplaces, running water, and enough determination to terrify any contractor alive today. Christensen spent over a decade blasting and carving rooms into the canyon wall using dynamite because apparently normal hobbies weren't exciting enough. Today, tourists can walk through the bizarre underground mansion while trying to process the sheer level of commitment required to live inside a rock full-time. Outside sits an equally chaotic collection of sculptures, signs, old vehicles, and random roadside oddities that make the entire property feel like a desert fever dream curated by someone who never once considered slowing down. The attraction became legendary among Route 66-style travelers because America loves people who turn terrible idea into historic landmark. Honestly, if your life choices eventually lead to dynamiting a mountain into a house, you're either deeply insane or accidentally brilliant. 14. The Jolly Green Giant, Minnesota. Some corporate mascots appear in commercials. Others become 70-foot-tall roadside giants looming over entire towns like frozen vegetable gods demanding tribute. In Blue Earth, Minnesota, the Jolly Green Giant stands proudly beside the highway wearing his leafy outfit and unsettlingly confident smile. Built in 1979 to celebrate the town's connection to green giant vegetables, the statue is so enormous it can be seen from miles away, which means somewhere in America, there's a child whose first memory is being emotionally overwhelmed by giant canned peas branding. The statue's massive grin radiates the exact energy of a man who definitely owns several tractors and gives suspiciously firm handshakes at county fairs. Tourists stop constantly for photos because humans apparently cannot resist giant food mascots. Nearby gift shops sell every green giant souvenir imaginable, allowing visitors to fully commit to the strangest possible vacation memories. The whole attraction feels beautifully trapped in a 1970s advertising universe where corporations believed the best way to sell vegetables was creating terrifyingly tall produce guardians beside highways. Honestly, after enough road trips through America, you stop questioning why giant frozen food mascots exist. You just accept them. 15. Dinosaur Park, South Dakota. Back in the 1930s during the Great Depression, the city of Rapid City faced an important question. How do we boost tourism? The answer, naturally, was giant concrete dinosaurs staring down from a hilltop like prehistoric lifeguards watching traffic. Dinosaur Park opened in 1936 and features massive green brontosauruses, tyrannosaurs, and triceratops sculptures overlooking the city below. And somehow, these dinosaurs have survived nearly a century of weather, tourists, and countless children climbing directly onto them despite every adult yelling, "Be careful," at least once. The dinosaurs were originally painted bright white, but later turned green because apparently someone decided prehistoric monsters needed stronger golf course energy. Families still make pilgrimages to the park every summer for photos that look delightfully identical across generations. Parents who visited as children now bring their own kids to stand beside giant concrete reptiles baking under the South Dakota sun. There's something strangely wholesome about it. America looked at extinction-level predators and somehow transformed them into cheerful roadside mascots. Honestly, only this country could turn giant ancient killing machines into something that feels nostalgic, comforting, and oddly perfect for eating packed sandwiches nearby. 16. The Shoe Tree. Nevada. Every country has cultural traditions. America has a tree covered entirely in old shoes beside a lonely desert highway. The shoe tree near Middlegate, Nevada, started after a couple allegedly had an argument during a road trip in the 1980s. The husband supposedly threw his wife's shoes into a tree during the fight, and somehow passing travelers looked at this and thought, you know what? We should all start doing that. That's how America works sometimes. One strange act becomes national folklore by accident. Over time, thousands of people added sneakers, boots, flip-flops, and probably at least one pair that should have been burned immediately. The tree transformed into a bizarre roadside shrine to bad decisions and worn-out footwear. Truckers, tourists, and exhausted road trippers stopped to toss shoes into the branches like they were making offerings to a sneaker god living in the Nevada desert. Eventually, the original tree was vandalized and cut down, but locals started another because apparently this tradition was too weird to die naturally. Honestly, nothing summarizes America better than strangers hurling old shoes into a tree and collectively deciding it's beautiful. 17. The world's largest truck stop, Iowa. Most highway rest stops offer gas, coffee, and mild disappointment. Iowa looked at that formula and decided to build an entire civilization dedicated to truckers. The Iowa 80 truck stop proudly calls itself the world's largest truck stop, which sounds less like a convenience store and more like something visible from space. This place is enormous. We're talking restaurants, movie theaters, showers, barbershops, dentists, trucking museums, and enough chrome accessories to outfit every semi-truck in North America. It's basically Las Vegas for exhausted men named Earl hauling frozen chicken across Nebraska at 3 a.m. Opened in 1964, the truck stop became legendary because America respects two things deeply: oversized food portions and people willing to drive across entire continents without sleeping properly. Tourists wander around completely stunned by the scale of it all. There are aisles dedicated entirely to hot sauce, cowboy hats, and novelty mugs that definitely say things HR departments would hate. The truck stop even hosts annual trucking events because apparently giant parking lots can become festivals if you believe in yourself hard enough. Honestly, this isn't a gas station anymore. It's a chrome-plated monument to caffeine and diesel fuel. 18. The Mystery Spot, California. Deep in the redwood forests of California sits a place where gravity apparently gave up and went home early. The Mystery Spot has been confusing tourists since 1939 with crooked cabins, tilted floors, and physics demonstrations that make grown adults question whether they accidentally inhaled something illegal in the parking lot. Balls roll uphill. People appear taller or shorter depending on where they stand. Water behaves strangely. And tour guides explain everything with the confidence of conspiracy theorists who own souvenir shops. Scientists will tell you it's all carefully engineered optical illusions caused by slanted architecture and human perception. But where's the fun in that? America prefers believing the forest contains mysterious magnetic forces bending reality itself. Visitors walk through tilted rooms trying desperately not to fall over while taking photos that make their relatives back home think Photoshop has finally become sentient. The entire attraction feels like someone turned motion sickness into a profitable business model. And honestly, respect. During the Cold War era, Americans were obsessed with UFOs, secret government experiments, and paranormal weirdness, so naturally roadside attractions leaned directly into collective confusion. The Mystery Spot proves one important truth. If you paint buildings crooked enough, people will happily pay money to feel spiritually dizzy. 19. The Giant Fork, Missouri. Human civilization created forks thousands of years ago as simple eating utensils. America eventually looked at that humble invention and decided one of them needed to be 35 feet tall. The Giant Fork in Springfield, Missouri stands proudly beside a building like a monument built by someone who took buffet culture way too seriously. Originally installed as part of an art project, the massive fork quickly became one of those roadside attractions that forces every passing driver to mutter, "Why is there a giant fork?" before immediately pulling over for pictures. And honestly, that's the genius of roadside America. Confusion is the marketing strategy. The fork itself weighs several tons and towers above visitors like a stainless steel warning from a future where kitchen utensils achieved dominance over humanity. Nearby sits a giant golf ball sculpture because apparently subtle themes were never part of the artistic vision. Tourists pose beneath the fork pretending to get stabbed while parents laugh exactly hard enough to embarrass their children permanently. The entire attraction captures America's deep belief that absolutely anything can become art if you simply make it absurdly large. Somewhere Michelangelo is rolling over in his grave, while Missouri proudly erects industrial-sized silverware beside the highway. 20. The UFO Welcome Center, South Carolina. Most people who believe in aliens buy books or maybe attend a convention. Jody Pendarvis built an entire UFO-shaped house beside the road and invited extraterrestrials to stop by anytime they wanted. The UFO Welcome Center in Bowman, South Carolina looks exactly like what would happen if a flying saucer crash-landed beside a trailer park and decided to retire peacefully. Built almost entirely from scrap metal, plywood, and fearless optimism, the structure rises several stories high with ramps, platforms, and decorations that feel deeply committed to the alien aesthetic. Pendarvis spent decades expanding the bizarre structure while happily telling visitors he'd be completely fine if aliens showed up tomorrow. Honestly, that level of confidence is almost admirable. Tourists climb inside the homemade spaceship while trying to process how one man transformed roadside paranoia into architecture. The attraction feels beautifully homemade in the purest American sense possible. No giant corporate funding, no major investors, just one determined man thinking the aliens deserve proper hospitality. At night, the glowing saucer looks like the kind of place where either profound cosmic truths or deeply questionable moonshine recipes are being discussed, possibly both at the same time. 21. The Enchanted Highway, North Dakota. North Dakota is famous for wide-open plains, endless skies, and enough empty highway to make you start apologizing to your GPS out of loneliness. But along one stretch of road, giant metal sculptures suddenly erupt from the landscape like someone accidentally dropped a fantasy movie into the Midwest. The Enchanted Highway features enormous scrap metal artworks, including giant grasshoppers, massive geese, colossal fish, and deer so huge they look capable of filing taxes. The project was started by local teacher Gary Greff, who wanted to save nearby towns from slowly disappearing after the interstate redirected traffic away from them. So, naturally, he responded by building giant metal monsters beside the road. And somehow, it worked. Travelers now stop constantly to photograph sculptures taller than buildings rising out of empty fields like agricultural transformers. Each installation feels increasingly surreal the farther you drive. One minute you're alone on a quiet highway, and the next you're staring at a gigantic steel pheasant with the energy of a post-apocalyptic county fair mascot. Honestly, America has mastered the art of fighting economic decline with giant roadside nonsense. And weirdly enough, it's kind of inspiring. 22. The Spam Museum, Minnesota. Most companies create normal museums about history, innovation, or culture. Hormel looked at canned meat and said, "This deserves an entire building." Welcome to the Spam Museum in Austin, Minnesota, a full-scale tribute to the mysterious pink rectangle that somehow survived wars, recessions, and several decades of Americans pretending they don't secretly eat it. The museum celebrates Spam with the kind of confidence usually reserved for national monuments. Visitors can learn about the product's role during World War II, stare at vintage advertisements, and purchase more Spam-themed merchandise than any emotionally stable person truly needs. There are interactive exhibits where tourists can pretend to sort canned meat on factory lines, which honestly sounds like a game invented during the Great Depression to keep morale alive. The building smells faintly like nostalgia mixed with sodium, and somehow, despite every joke people make about canned meat, the museum remains wildly popular. Families drive hours to celebrate processed pork products shaped like emergency rations from another dimension. The entire attraction feels uniquely American, taking a humble grocery item and turning it into a patriotic experience complete with gift shops, photo opportunities, and deeply committed branding. 23. The Giant Peanut, Georgia. At some point, America collectively decided ordinary vegetables and snacks weren't enough. We needed giant versions standing beside highways like oversized food guardians protecting the interstate system. That brings us to the Giant Peanut in Ashburn, Georgia, a towering tribute to the state's peanut farming industry and probably the world's most intimidating baseball snack. The sculpture proudly rises above visitors with the exact energy of a mascot who takes county fairs way too seriously. Georgia loves peanuts so much that apparently one normal-sized peanut simply couldn't express the emotion properly. Travelers constantly stop for photos because human beings are genetically incapable of resisting giant food-shaped objects. The peanut itself somehow manages to look both cheerful and slightly judgmental at the same time, like it's silently disappointed you bought gas station trail mix instead of supporting local agriculture. Nearby gift shops sell boiled peanuts, roasted peanuts, peanut brittle, peanut ice cream, and enough peanut-themed products to make your arteries quietly file a complaint. Honestly, Roadside America discovered long ago that if you make something absurdly large, people will not only stop, they'll proudly tell friends they visited it. That's basically the entire tourism strategy. 24. The Big Duck, New York. In the 1930s, a duck farmer on Long Island faced a difficult business challenge. How do you convince passing drivers to buy more ducks? The answer, naturally, was building a giant duck-shaped building beside the road like a waterfowl-themed hallucination. The Big Duck became one of America's earliest roadside attractions and honestly set a dangerous precedent for the entire country. Once people realized giant animal-shaped buildings attracted customers, there was absolutely no going back. The structure itself is exactly what it sounds like, a massive white duck complete with glowing red eyes at night, because apparently subtle terror was included free of charge. Originally used to sell actual ducks and eggs, the building eventually became a historic landmark because America deeply respects bizarre architecture built with complete sincerity. Tourists now visit just to stand beside a giant bird while wondering how civilization reached this point. At night, the illuminated duck looks less like a farm advertisement and more like an ancient creature worshipped by suburban cultists. And honestly, if a giant glowing duck suddenly appeared beside the road during a thunderstorm, most people would probably just accept it without asking too many questions. That's the power of American road trips. 25. Wall Drug, South Dakota. Wall Drug started during the Great Depression as a tiny pharmacy in the middle of nowhere. Then the owners discovered the single most powerful force in American history: free ice water. Seriously. In the 1930s, travelers crossing South Dakota in summer heat were desperate for relief, so Wall Drug began advertising free ice water to passing drivers, and America collectively lost its mind. Soon, the highway filled with billboards counting down the miles to Wall Drug like some kind of desert prophecy. Hundreds of signs promised dinosaurs, coffee, pie, cowboy boots, souvenirs, and apparently every product known to mankind. Today, Wall Drug is less of a store and more of a fully operational roadside empire. There are giant jackalopes, animatronic cowboys, restaurants, arcades, gift shops, and enough tourist traps to financially destroy an entire bus tour in under 30 minutes. Families stop because they've seen billboards for the attraction across 3 different states and psychologically can no longer resist. Honestly, Wall Drug may be America's greatest marketing achievement. They turned free water into a sprawling tourist kingdom powered entirely by exhaustion, curiosity, and aggressive signage visible from orbit. 26. The Fremont Troll, Washington. Under a bridge in Seattle lurks a giant concrete troll clutching a real Volkswagen Beetle like he just caught someone trying to skip toll payments in his underground kingdom. The Fremont Troll was built in 1990 after locals decided the empty space beneath the bridge needed something more welcoming than crime and bad lighting. Naturally, they chose nightmare fuel. The sculpture weighs several tons and looks exactly like the kind of creature ancient villagers would throw goats at to avoid curses. Tourists climb all over the troll taking smiling vacation photos while sitting inside the crushed Volkswagen, which feels strangely cheerful for a scene that technically depicts automotive violence. The troll's giant eye reflects sunlight in deeply unsettling ways, especially during Seattle's endless gray afternoons when the whole area feels suspiciously cinematic. Over time, the troll became one of the city's most beloved landmarks because humans apparently bond emotionally with giant monsters if they remain stationary long enough. The attraction perfectly captures Pacific Northwest energy, slightly artistic, vaguely threatening, and committed to making outsiders uncomfortable in a charming way. Honestly, every city should probably have one giant bridge troll just to keep expectations realistic. 27. South of the border, South Carolina. And finally, we arrive at the undisputed king of chaotic roadside Americana, south of the border. Sitting beside Interstate 95 near the North Carolina border, this sprawling neon-colored tourist complex looks like Las Vegas crash-landed into a truck stop after making several deeply questionable life choices. Built in the 1940s, the attraction exploded in popularity thanks to hundreds of billboards stretching across multiple states, slowly hypnotizing exhausted drivers with endless promises of fireworks, souvenirs, restaurants, motels, and something vaguely called Mexican excitement. At the center stands Pedro, the giant mascot whose oversized sombrero and permanent grin have become legendary among generations of road-tripping families. The place contains arcades, gift shops, statues, rides, and enough flashing signs to make your retinas file for workers' compensation. At night, the entire complex glows like a carnival, powered entirely by caffeine and poor impulse control. Families either absolutely love south of the border or become emotionally overwhelmed within 6 minutes of arriving. There is no middle ground. And honestly, that's the perfect ending for a journey through Roadside America. Loud, strange, unforgettable, and somehow surviving entirely on nostalgia, confusion, and giant billboards beside the highway. America didn't just build highways, it built thousands of strange little monuments to pure chaos. Which roadside attraction was the weirdest? Let me know in the comments before somebody builds a giant hot dog cathedral in Nebraska.